Come and lay pipe with me. Back again. So we're talking about sexual assault. Talking about what it is, what I think it is, what we could call it for the sake of this discussion, because it opens up realistic ways of anticipating the discomfort that we can cause other people by the way we're approaching them, because we might not be able to prevent that approach from seeming sexual to them. And everything I do and say and feel since I came out of my mother's womb could be potentially dangerous to women. Feminism has gone that far. Now we scoff. I don't scoff, but we kind of recoil as men sometimes and think, teaching young boys not to rape is a little bit far. Okay. And I don't like it as arguments against that type of thing, and usually it's just something you do, and it's not like that's happening everywhere you go, obviously, because, things tend to even out. There might be a lot of women who've asked an anonymous survey, say, should we teach little boys to never, never, never rape women or allow other men to do so? Yes or no? You'd probably take yes, would you? Yeah. So I can kind of see both sides. Howdy.
Looks like a decent day. Come on, Sadie.
Yeah. And, it's the husband of a sexual worker. Nothing you can do. I'm just in a good mood, I don't care. And luckily, his energy just seems less offensive to me. It's just not to be offensive to him. Dog looked at me a little further today. He's aged the last few years. I have no doubt that his wife is sucking the life out of him, by the way. These are things I'll never confirm. He's like, what's the point of talking about it? It's like, I'll give that guy credit time. I've not completely detested him coming near me and using my name. The reason was because I didn't know who he was at a distance. My eyes aren't perfect, but I read the energy. Okay? So he knows and his dog knows I can read energy. Okay? That's all. And mercy of each other. He's at my mercy, I'm at his mercy. That's just the way it goes, and that's what him is. You give me a bad feeling, it's just as bad as if I give you a bad feeling. You understand? It doesn't matter what you're trying to do. It shouldn't happen. It's a perfect example of what we're talking about. I'm not going to talk shit about him because I just saw him and I don't want to connect to his energy at all, but I don't want to disrespect him because he's not harming me per se. But I have found him and his wife quite offensive nonetheless. But anyway, sexual assault. Anything that any gender, thinks and does and behaves, and granting and or notwithstanding that it's a pretty complicated thing to think about how you're acting and behaving all of your life. I'm not trying to be rude or rhetorical, let's just take it slowly, okay? Thinking about how we're acting, behaving, all this, it's complex because, we're all dealing with a world that, hey, here's infinite love and intelligence. You've made it to 24, 55, and everything is now finally completely ethical towards all human animals. We've restored and come to what needed to be restored about what had happened to human beings over 1,000 or 2,000 years of a fairly dark period that we know as, let's forget about it, AD and BC. And you're like, I get to decide how I'm every day in the most wonderful circumstances. But let's just say that nobody has gotten that in 1,000 years. Okay? So, and let's give ourselves credit. Let's give you as humanity credit I don't normally give you, quite honestly. But whoever you are, by all of our numbers and demographics, have done something, anything really, to learn to survive in this world. Good for you. It's pretty complicated. There really, most societies, no matter how religious, or there is no really set ethics for being a human being. There isn't. There is no one consistently grounded way of looking at what is right or wrong about how humans behave, more so than any other animal on the earth in the history of the earth. And we got to put that on the table, you see, because if we don't put all the right things on the table, we're not going to see what's going on. Right? Of course, it's bad. Of course, men are at fault and women are at fault, and everyone's getting fucked, and we're all working really hard, and we're really, really awesome, and we shouldn't get too negative, because at the end of the day, we just have to make the best of it. And I don't think that's enough for me. I don't know about you. That's not enough. And I don't think that's enough for anybody. I think everyone who works and breathes and sweats and cries and laughs or plots with glee the vengeance upon their enemy in some completely cold, psychopathic way, on some level, at some point, in some strata of our minds, don't accept that. Don't accept a world that isn't sufficient for us. Even though technically that sounds strange. You're not allowed to think that. Not a billion hours of human instruction in the last 150 years have encouraged any given child to think, this world isn't good enough for me. It's not sufficient for me. Right? Well, there's a reason why Oliver Twist begins with a paragraph that says, if Allah had been born to anyone competent, teachers or doctors or nurses or parents, he probably wouldn't have lived at all. Because they'll as sure snuff the life out of you as if you were born in a workhouse to a dying mother in a cold, septic environment. Why can Oliver Twist say this? Why is it still one of the most famous books in the world? How could Charles Dickens write that? Why? Because it's true. That's why. Because it's true. And it's buried in the subtext. Right? And it's meant to be. The irony, if you can pick it up, is just a little deeper than you think. And that's because literature is controlled by loyalty. Right? So you can pick up, if you were like a fourth year literary student or a first year literary student, you could be like, oh yeah, I get it. It's ironic. It's satire. I got it. It's like Jonathan Swift talking about eating poor babies to solve the hunger crisis in England. We'll just eat the babies. Let's eat poor people. Yay! What is he really saying? And he's using the most sophisticated English at the time to say it. It's not sophisticated because it's hard to understand. It's sophisticated because it is damn fucking... If you've never read good fucking rhetoric, you should fucking go read that. A Modest Proposal. Because that's what my favorite and probably only decent lit professor ever got me to read the first day I took his class in the first year of college. And I thank him for it. It exposed me to the finest fucking literature in the world. If you could write like this, you could write anything. Anything you wanted. The world would be yours. Do you understand? You may not, so go read it. And when you finally understand what I'm talking about, now you're a lit student, right? Forget all the years. You will be a lit student. You will be a lifelong student of the magic of words if you understand what I'm saying. You're done. You're done. That's the beginning, that's the finish, everything in between. There's a luxury and a richness to that, right? You are no doubt very heedful of that fact in all of your choices in life and how you think. It's all about clarity, no matter what. Some people, they practice dodging ninja knives, throwing stars. Some people dodge bullets. Some people jump out of aircrafts. Some heart surgery every other day. Great stuff, right? But the one thing anyone can do is have clarity of thought. Clarity of thought. And clarity of thought brings clarity of purpose and the purpose of your thought. You would say, I'm thinking today because I feel like my survival needs something. Because I need food or tits or ass, whatever I need to think. And I want clarity in my thought. And as I approach clarity in my thought, it will clarify the very purpose of my thought. And the purpose of my thought is my well-being. And so I will feel better attaining to the clarity of my thought. And the purpose of my thought, being and that of others, will also be fleshed out. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I have. Did you know, after reading a few paragraphs of Jonathan Swift, I wrote that essay that you just heard in about 3.5 minutes and presented to the class. when asked my thoughts upon that essay. Put in slightly different words, which I could recite to you, but I'm not going to. Right? My professor liked me. He introduced me to Percy Shelley, and I was very thankful for that introduction. I like to be introduced to authors. You see, sometimes you can read a book and you'll be introduced to them. He introduced me to Shelley. Not everyone can introduce you to a great author. He introduced me to Percy Shelley, and he made a good choice. He didn't like my analysis of Wordsworth, which to this day I don't quite understand, but the thing is, it's like, maybe I haven't been properly introduced to Wordsworth. I've always thought it very interesting. Tintern Abbey was, that one about eternity. I forget what it's called now. I shouldn't have. Intimations of Immortality, right? Child is father of the man, you know. Trailing clouds of glory do we come as children, and then shades of the prison house begin to close. Now, do you know why that's sophisticated? Do you know what's ironic about that? And you would say, oh, well, life is a kind of prison, dude. I get it. Sophisticated as it is. No, you don't get it. Sure, anyone can get that. Any moron can get that, right? That's just one level. A 3-year-old could get that. Do you get the irony? I'll give you a moment to think about it. Shades of the prison house begin to close. You don't lose your sense of the sun. And what is a shade for? Blocking out the sun. It's other things, but we're going to get to that in a moment, okay? And you'll be thankful you ran into me today. People don't get any fucking education anymore. Then I get to be angry and arrogant, and I like that. Baby, that's what I like. It's like I'm a cokehead or something. When I take coke, I know everything about literature. No, I just spend a lot of time thinking about things. I spend a lot of time thinking about things. You don't want to be in my mind. Okay, so shades block out the sun. He's not talking about the child being blind. And trailing clouds of glory does he come. When you come, where are you coming from? He's coming from heaven, right? Coming from heaven. And shades of the bringing heaven. So it's not shades of the sun, it's shades of heaven. And how could it be a shade of heaven if heaven wasn't, in a sense, like the sun? Like everything worth seeing, right? And a clarity of purpose of what you strained and hungered to see and daily laid grasp of, like your mother's breast. You get what I'm saying? These aren't stupid people, right? No, my professor would probably be like, Landon, you've improved. All right, these are things that are waiting in this text for you, but you won't know until you start thinking about it and talking about it to yourself or someone. Why do they use these words? Right? What is a poet, really? See, a poet is a historian of the mind. Dum, dum, dum. And it's not like it's not something anyone couldn't do. You do it every day in your own head. But in this particular discussion, we're talking about an event that didn't just take place when this fictional child trails the clouds of glory and gets acquainted with their new prison house. Okay, prison, play on prison. What is he not seeing? The sun or heaven? The substance of heaven, right? And the substance of his own eyes. So there's a pale or a pall put over a few different levels of his corporeal developmental epics. That of the substance of heaven, that is the substance of his own flesh and blood, and that have the brilliant energies of that substance and the hues of that substance and the sun or the force, the purpose, and the clarity of that substance in his own hunger, right? And the child testifies as to where he came from by his ravenous hunger. He hungers as much for anything in the world as the substance of where he came from. I've just given you a 10-year druidic education in the last 10 minutes. You're welcome. But what is that druid? It's an education in where you came from. It's a reverence, right? Knowledge of this is a reverence for what is sacred and what is sound. And by the way, a shade is also a soul. So there's a whole other level of the soul as something of a financial instrument that is conceived from the blocking biology of heaven and the earth in the developing and in the birthing human mind. And all of the subsequent contractions, which are epiphanic with our birth, of all the hungers, advancements, and retreats of our destiny on earth or ever. So there's a lot at stake. Every day is Armageddon in your own mind. You're fighting for a lot. You're fighting for the clarity of your thought. Okay. This does have quite a camera. Holy cow, that's interesting looking. There's a suspicious car for a person on. What I found what I'm still finding in the last 3 years, the incredible leap, for all different reasons I won't go into here, in the strength and the testing of the strength of my voice. And I was never much into advancing my particularly sexual interests or gender interests in the world. I really, up until the age of even 47, 46, 45, it never even occurred to me. If anything, it was just like, make sure you don't hurt women. That is my entire gender intelligence, which had allowed them to hurt me all of my life. So I know from experience that that's not enough information for a man, especially since you're not enjoying anything men enjoy about women. I'm just getting raped and assaulted. And what I've learned, I've been forced to learn, based on, you might say, unfortunate choices as to live or with whom to live and so forth, what groups to participate in, and cults. They basically are cults. And people in cults always commit sexual assault. It's a given. It's inevitable. And all human groups have a cult capacity. That's going to have the same cult necessity. All these white cars, these cars, it's amazing. That guy is so gross, that guy that walked by me in the forest. Ugh. His dog is weird, he is weird. I find everything extremely weird. He's innocuous as far as he got. He's been around children his whole life. And if you're able or willing to reflect upon your own childhood, daycare workers, or elementary school teachers, and I can, you'd see that it's a very strange environment in general. For one, very strange indeed. It's not. School isn't a place really. A social club. You know, children turn it into that, and it's kind of supposed to be that. It's a legitimate social club. It's not a home. We're not supposed to call it a prison, okay? We call it a school, so a school is not a prison, even though a shul is